Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another great Q&A. We are today talking about an intro to management for reactivity. I know we have spoken about reactivity even in our last Q&A, as well as management for puppies. This is kind of combining that too, talking about management for reactivity. It is a very overlooked and important aspect to fixing and solving a dog's reactivity, and it's a huge part of somebody's training plan. So yeah, we'll definitely get into it. And as usual, if any questions come up, the chat is now open as well as the Q&A section. So if you guys have any questions, throw them out and we will go over some of those at the very end. So let's get started. So, what exactly is management for reactivity? Essentially, it means management for activity means setting up your dog's environment to prevent a reactive outburst before they happen. So, this is like crossing the street when another dog appears, using a visual barrier at home, frosting your windows, using baby gates to prevent them from running at the door and barking, anything that just prevents the actual rehearsal. Ideally, this is not a long term fix, but it does stop the rehearsal of that reactive behavior while you then work on the behavioral change through desensitizing and conditioning. So, just to talk a little bit about the actual science behind why this is such a crucial part of working through activity. Every time a dog reacts, let's say they're barking, lunging, etc., they're strengthening the neural pathways that support that behavior because somehow, some way, that behavior is getting reinforced. An example I use all the time is a dog who barks out the window. Let's say they're barking at the Amazon guy that just dropped off a package, or they're barking at somebody who's walking their dog and they're walking past your house but moving along. Technically, if your dog barked at that and his intention was to let them know they're there, maybe even scare them off, it worked. What happens next is that the Amazon guy leaves, the person in front of your house leaves. So they kind of get some sense of reinforcement from that. Maybe, let's say, even your dog is doing it out of boredom. They get reinforced because it makes them less bored. So, this is why the behavior is continuing to happen. Even if that reaction doesn't necessarily seem super rewarded, it often is. The trigger goes away, or the dog feels momentarily relieved. Management interrupts that rehearsal loop, which reduces reinforcement and prevents the reactive behavior from becoming more automatic or intense over time. I know that feels very hefty, so I'll leave that on for a second just to get people to reread it, take notes if you need to. This is just more of the science on why this is important. Moving on to the next. Every management plan will be very different depending on so many different factors. These factors usually align with the dog's age, personality, genetics, history, environment, so much more. Depends on how many people live in your house, depends on how many dogs live in your house, what other kind of animals are we dealing with. It depends on, what kind of breed the dog is, which I know we talked about too, but we'll get into that. There's so many things that this can depend on. It's very, very important to also rule out any health issues when working with reactivity. I know you probably see it everywhere online and you're sick of hearing it sometimes, but let's say you have not gotten that vet checkup or an evaluation of sorts to rule out any of these issues. I really want to push it because it happens all the time. Not even like that long ago, I had a client who was dealing with a dog who out of nowhere became super reactive. I was trying to push him to go to the vet for a bit, and just kind of mention, something seems a little off here because it happened so suddenly and it seems to have some anxiety associated with it. And they did eventually go to the vet and they found out the dog had this massive thorn in his foot for, God knows how long, that got infected. And that was the cause of that reactivity. So, yeah, just think about that, when it comes to working through reactivity. And let's say anybody finds this video and they're just learning about reactivity. Again, do not overlook that vet visit. Highly recommend getting that done ASAP. So, really, the steps to success here when working with reactivity is that big step one, identifying that trigger. So, what exactly is your dog reacting to? Is your dog reacting to a dog, to a person, to a smell, to noises, all of the above? We have to figure out what that is. Step two is creating that management plan. So, we cannot skip this step. Management plan is so, so important to stop that rehearsal of the behavior. And step three, change the way that your dog feels about this trigger through behavioral modification. So the training comes next once we figure out that management plan. again, plays a crucial role. So just do not forget to do not overlook this. Do not forget to add this into your training plan, and we'll be able to solve it from there. So we manage things really every day. If this also kind of helps people relate or, compare it to something in your own real life. A big example of this might be like keeping matches away from kids so they don't accidentally start a fire, right? We can tell kids all day, don't play with the matches, don't light anything up, but they might anyway. So what do you have to do instead? You have to make sure that they can't actually reach them. Another example of management might be that you're allergic to cats, so that you avoid spending too much time in houses that have cats, so that you can manage your allergies. Maybe you're lactose intolerant, so you avoid products with too much dairy most of the time. I'm sure people still eat dairy all the time. You are recovering from a knee injury, so you avoid squats at the gym. That one, of course, I know that everybody could probably relate to at a capacity. Just thinking about management, you have to remember that reactivity is a conditioned emotional response. So every time that your dog reacts, so the rehearsal of that behavior happens, that behavior becomes more ingrained. So going back to that example of you keep doing squats at the gym while you're trying to heal from a knee injury, your knee will take longer to heal. If you keep messing with your injury and keep pushing through the pain or push through the problem, it's not going to help you in the long run, and if anything, it can just continue to make it worse. So we need to remember what our routine is. We have to identify that trigger, manage the reactions, then train the dog to no longer react. So some other examples of management that might work really well for a lot of people would be like using window film and curtains to manage a dog who is reacting out of a window. So the window film works fantastic. I get really great feedback from a lot of clients who use that. Of course, curtains work just as well too, but I know that a lot of the times you have windows because you do like, the light to come in. And, I'm all about working with clients to also just meet maybe like their own needs and just make sure that they feel comfortable with the management plan. Window film seems to be a really good compromise. Avoid triggers through physical barriers while on walks. So just trying to go a certain route that maybe you're not going to see as many triggers. Just have a game plan of hiding behind cars as much as you can when you do notice that a trigger is about to come up. Just always have that out. Crates and window shades might be used for car reactivity. That's a fantastic management plan. Or just in general, walking your dog at low traffic times if reactivity towards other dogs is your problem or people. So, yeah, these are just a few examples. There's so much more, but these are probably the more commonly used. Now, let's get into a couple of case study examples. So, we'll talk about a few clients that I've had lately and what we have done specifically for their management plan, not necessarily for the actual plan to work through the reactivity. So this is Daisy, a 3-year-old terrier chihuahua mix. So she reacts out of the window really like anywhere from 5 to 10 times a day, every day when somebody walks by the house. Amazon people too, really anything along those lines. She will do this whether her pet parents are in the room or not. Might have spelled whether wrong, so sorry for the English teachers out there. But mom and dad work 8 hours a day, and mom works from home in an office. Daisy hangs out free around the house all day. So this is just some initial notes on what's happening with this dog. So if we identify the trigger at that point, we, know the trigger is people and dogs walking by the house. So she is out the window, that's where she barks. What our management plan would look like would be putting up window film and curtains to block Daisy's view of the front of the house. And during the day, ideally Daisy should be probably kept in a space where she can't just, have that alone time staring out the window all day. She could be doing this out of boredom. Again, we need to do more evaluation to truly figure out what's going on there, but we have this very first step put in place of that management plan. Daisy is currently reacting, 5 to 10 times a day. Ideally, we're looking to get that down to 0. Whatever we need to do within our own plan to prevent the rehearsal, we would immediately implement. Again, who knows why she's doing this? We need more evaluation to think about it, but the initial evaluation is, believed to be doing this for a mix of these reasons of fear, boredom, some protection instinct. In addition to the management plan, we also want to evaluate those physiological needs, ensuring that she gets enough exercise in her daily routine and as well as mental enrichment. So this is addressed, training begins. So this is also a big thing that we might ask or talk about in the beginning of a training session, is to figure out how much exercise a dog gets every day. Are they getting bored? Do they have enough mental stimulation? Because so many times when working with a behavioral issue or training overall, it can be really challenging to truly, work through this issue if these needs aren't covered. So now we have Ollie, who is a 2-year-old Shepherd Border Collie mix. Mom recently had shoulder surgery and struggles with pulling on his walks. He has high energy and he is very excited to go out and about. But once on walks, Ollie becomes reactive towards dogs, and mom hasn't walked him in fear that she is going to get hurt further. So this is, again, understandable. Somebody is in pain. Somebody's dealing with, that mild disability. Whether, obviously it could be temporary here, but it still is that disability. Additionally, Ollie will become destructive around the house and is always looking for something to do. We identified the trigger. The trigger, immediately off the bat is, the dogs and the excitement towards other people in the walks. But a really like a kind of unknown trigger is the overexcitement and excessive energy. The trigger could be the thought of going on the walk or the smells of the outsides and like the excitement that comes with that. And that alone is triggering him because he's not necessarily reacting like crazy only on the walks. He's kind of like reacting once he thinks that the walk is about to begin. So if you kind of read that again, kind of go back, he is very high energy and very excited to go out and about. So he sees the leash, he sees anything that insinuates a walk, and then we're getting this big blow up emotional reaction. Our management plan right now is to stop walks altogether with mom for a while and focus on addressing the underlying excessive energy and boredom. Then training additional skills for overall impulse control would be next. I know that kind of bleeds out of the management plan and more into actual training needs to be done, but just wanted to throw that out there. And of course, we would address the exercise and mental enrichment through alternative ways. I want to clarify too, this doesn't mean I'm saying like we need to not exercise the dog moving forward. It's just that there needs to be some sort of prevention of that rehearsal of getting to have that big blowout and having it end in a walk. So we need to come up with some alternative tasks in the meantime. So when we want to tire out a dog, this is again what I call that double-edged sword. So this means that management at times can feel like it helps and hurts at the same time. The dog should no longer go on walks for now so that they don't rehearse that behavior. But the dog has excessive energy and needs more consistent exercise. Now what? So now that I'm saying, stop letting the dog reinforce themselves throughout the walk, but now we're stopping the walk. These are some other ideas of what we would do instead. We would focus a lot on mental enrichment, like sniffing enrichment, licking enrichment, chewing enrichment, things like that. And you can still focus on physical exercise. The first thing that I would push, and I know I didn't write about it, but I did kind of push that, with the previous case with Ollie, is to hire a dog walker. And this means that she would ideally what we want the dog walker to do is to do a little bit of a training plan at some capacity in the beginning before the dog goes on a walk. We also suggested getting the dog out in the car and taking them someplace else for some exercise, to like a park or somewhere where they're not going to see a lot of triggers. So there's some ideas there, but we'll go over that in a different Q&A. Um, a flirt pole or agility equipment would be a fantastic way to exercise your dog if they're not getting consistent exercise through walks, due to a disability or due to the weather being bad, all the above. You can continue leash walking in the house, backyard, or front yard. When I tell people to not go on these big long walks, it doesn't mean don't walk your dog. Those are kind of two different things. Where what I mean by that is that you can still walk the dog. We just need to find a way to walk them without overstimulating them. So if you're going on this big 2-mile walk around the neighborhood, the dog's getting overstimulated. So now we need to find a type of radius that is manageable for you and the dog. And then training games and pattern games like a look and touch, touch and toss, look and toss. Really, any of those are great. The 1, 2, 3 pattern games, station to station, that kind of stuff. But yeah, kind of circling back to how important mental enrichment is. Again, all 3 of these things are important, of the sniffing, licking, and chewing types of enrichment. So look into what that might look like for you guys, and highly recommend making sure that we incorporate that into a dog's routine at least every day. 30 minutes a day would be a great starting point. Dogs, again, need that mental enrichment and physical exercise every single day. There's no exceptions. So even if the weather's bad, even if you can't walk the dog due to surgery or something like that, the dog still needs to do something. They need to stimulate themselves. They need to get to, let out that excessive energy, or you're going to continue to have these problems that you're seeing in your day-to-day life. So prioritize these two big aspects, of course, alongside management. It all ties in together. And then you move on to additional training. If reactions are still happening, our management plan is not good enough. So if you're hearing your client and we feel like the management plan isn't solid, we need to revisit it and see what's missing there and see what we need to revise and make changes to. If you even at that point still feel like you're doing everything correct and you are going by textbook, but the reactions are still happening, that too needs further evaluation to see if there's other outside factors contributing to this. Are they still able to react? Maybe because you don't know that they're reacting because they're doing it when you're not home. Are they, maybe when you put them in a crate, are they reacting in the crate towards little noises? Maybe we need to get a camera on the dog in situations where we're not present to look at that type of rehearsal. There's a lot of things that we might have to dive deep into, but just keep this in mind. We need to interrupt that cycle or else nothing will change. The dog reacts to other dogs on walks. You simply attempt to train the dog to stop. You are trying to engage and disengage. You're trying to get their focus back up to you. You're trying to desensitize. But the continued behavioral rehearsal happens because the dog still sees other dogs on walks and still reacts to them every day. You're going to end up in this really vicious cycle that doesn't end. And so we have to break that pattern first, and then we'll begin some gradual exposure in a controlled way to change your dog's emotional reaction. So we want to change that CER, that conditioned emotional reaction. Just a reminder, management plans look different for each dog, so a training consultation is very important to solve what will work best for your particular case. So if you are new here or if you need any help with anything, again, feel free to ask away. When we do some of these Q&As, we do a little section at the very end for questions, and feel free to submit those and we can always go over that. But even, simple questions might not get the full picture, so evaluation is really important. Having a solid management plan will fully transform your dog's training. It really will make or break your reactivity training. And this management concept applies to so many other behavioral issues that are out there. So if you're ever curious on how it applies to a behavioral issue that you're trying to solve or work through, reach out, let me know, ask questions, and we'll get it solved. Reactivity training as a whole takes a lot of time. This is just a small piece of the puzzle. There are other puzzle pieces that we have to address when it comes to reactivity. So just think about this as a small step moving forward. But remember, implementing a management technique can be done immediately. You also, if you're hiring a trainer and the trainer's availability isn't out for another 3 weeks, or you're going on vacation, all the above, you don't need more time or to wait for something to happen to implement a management routine. You can do this literally today. Just think about everything we talked about. Think about how we stop that rehearsal, how we get that dog barking at the window 5 to 10 times a day down to 0, whatever works for you guys, we need to implement. But really, it's going to help both your mental health as well as your dog's. I know that having that reaction happen on every single walk that you go out does not make the walks enjoyable for you. Having that reaction happen every single time something walks by, outside, it stresses you out, and in general, barking is supposed to stress you out. It is psychologically, a lot of dogs were bred for this to alert humans of things, and psychologically humans blood pressure rises, their heart rate rises, all the above. So managing this is going to be a massive help. Thank you for watching. So that wraps up the seminar. And if you have any questions, let's go ahead and review them. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. But if you ever have a question and you are not a part of these Q&As, feel free to shoot me a message or reach out. I'm going to post this on YouTube in hopes that it helps anybody who is looking for some help with their activity. But I hope you guys have a fantastic day and keep up the good work. Let's go into the Q&A.